Hello, this is Aaron Gothier again, Judge of the 53rd Circuit Court for the counties of Sheboygan and Presque Isle, continuing our Ask the Judge series on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and enable notifications so you know when we're live in court and can watch our court sessions. You can comment on the Ask a Judge video or on this video if you have any questions about the legal system in general. We had a question about restitution. How is restitution paid, especially if somebody's in jail or in prison? Well, restitution is mandatory under Michigan law. An offender must make the victim whole. Now, this is easier said than done, and restitution can be a very frustrating process for victims of crime. Due process and legal fairness requires that the financial losses be specifically proven and that only those losses that are directly attributable to the wrongdoing be ordered to be part of restitution. So that means the process can be intrusive and frustrating to crime victims, but it's necessary. And the prosecutor's office, for that reason, has victim advocates to help them to explain and assist with that process. But once it's ordered, it's required that restitution be included as any judgment of sentence. So how's it paid? Well, you can't get blood from a stone. So if they don't have it, you can't create the money for the victim to be made whole. And of course, if someone is incarcerated, they're less likely to be able to pay it. So the criminal justice system has to balance all of those things. There's no perfect solution to the problem. Here's what the law allows. The restitution ordered in the judgment of sentence remains effective until it is paid in full. In other words, a restitution order does not expire. It cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. And it also operates as a civil judgment. It can be enforced just like a civil judgment can, but the crime victim need not go obtain a separate civil judgment. The restitution ordered in the judgment of sentence can be enforced. This can be done just like any other civil judgment. It can be recorded as a lien against the defendant's property. You can garnish the defendant's wages, bank accounts, or state income taxes. You can even conduct what's called a debtor's exam to require the debtor to state under oath, give information about their finances. But this process is tedious and sometimes difficult. Just ask any lawyer or collection agent. So the law allows for additional ways to help a crime victim. For example, if I place a defendant on probation, one of the conditions of that probation is that the defendant make reasonable payments toward restitution. If they don't do that, I can revoke their probation and send them back to jail. If someone goes to prison, restitution is also a condition of the parole. Also, prosecutors are allowed to, they're not required to in any particular case, but prosecutors are legally authorized to help victims on any enforcement actions for restitution. So if a defendant's not making reasonable efforts, the criminal justice system can lean on them with the threat of jail. They can be held in contempt if their probation or parole is already passed. It continues on and can be brought forward on contempt charges. But we can't jail someone for non-payment of anything in America without first demonstrating that they have an ability to pay, but they're refusing to. So again, you can't get blood from a stone. And this can be very frustrating for victims of crime because it wasn't their fault that they suffered those losses. So the responsibility lies in the offender, but what happens if the offender cannot make it right? They just don't have the funds. Well, in limited circumstances, the system does shift that burden onto the general taxpayers. There is a crime victim compensation program, but this is for certain expenses and certain victims for certain crimes, generally those that have suffered a physical injury. This program is somewhat limited, and there's a hesitation for the legal system to shift too much of the burden of restitution directly onto the taxpayers. We want to place as much of that burden on the wrongdoer as we can. So the bottom line is not a simple answer, is it? Restitution is an important part of the criminal justice system. It's an important part of justice, of making the victim whole from losses they've suffered through a crime. But we also have a system that has to be fair and not throw people in prison because they don't have money. We can't incarcerate people for poverty, and we don't run debtors' prisons. So we have to be coercive and make a defendant pay what they can. And there is a threat of jail if they are not making reasonable efforts. But again, you just can't create the wealth, and you can't get blood from a stone. So it can be a slow and a frustrating process for crime victims. So a victim's best friend can be the prosecutor's office, which has a crime victim rights advocate to help them explain the process, to help them through that process, and to help advise them, not legal advice, but to help advise them on how to go forward. And the Sheboygan County Prosecutor's Office, for example, and the Presque Isle County Prosecutor's Office as well, have victim rights advocates. They have websites on the county websites with links on those websites for more specific information and helpful information for victims of crime. I encourage you to check out those websites, check out that information. There's a lot there. So that's sort of the bottom line of restitution. It's very important, and we do everything we can to make the defendants pay what they're able to pay. But sadly, that doesn't always achieve justice in a perfect sense. But I hope that answers the question of how restitution fits into the criminal justice system. Like I said, subscribe to our channel, enable notifications so you know when we're going live in court. You know when we drop one of these videos of Ask a Judge. If you have any other questions about the legal system, please again post them in the comments to this video or the Ask the Judge video. And I'll see you in court.